Hello and welcome to our 18th talk of Inclusive Design 24, November 2017. As always, Inclusive Design 24 is brought to you by the Paciella Group with kind support from Barclays and the Centre for Inclusive Design. And you can find out more about those organisations on our website. If you like the session or any of the talks that you've heard today, please hit the like button and subscribe to the ID24 channel for future event streams and videos. So a quick hello to the University of Nebraska, who are streaming ID24 today. Thank you very much for your support. Hope you're enjoying it, and hope you enjoy what we've got coming up. Don't forget to send us questions for presenters by tweeting it with the hashtag ID24, and we'll pass these questions on to the presenters at the end of their presentation. And for each session, we'll be giving away a free 90-day JAWS license for the best question or comment or general tweet. Please note that the YouTube chat is open, but we are not monitoring for questions to our presenters. It's just there so you can chat with other participants. And with that, I'm going to hand over to John and Raji, who's going to talk about switch control and introduction for mobile app teams. Thank you very much. Take it away.
Thank you, Ian. So I'm John McNabb, and with me is Raji Subramanian, and we're colleagues. We work together on a mobile app team, and here we go. First, a bit about what switch control is, what it does. For anyone who can't tap on a touch screen, let's say you have a motor disability, you might be quadriplegic, switch control offers an alternative to tapping on the touch screen. So here's a great quote from Todd Stobelfeld. He's a switch control user. He says, "Convenience for you is independence for me." So for him, switch control makes the difference between being able to use a touchscreen and not being able to use it at all. He did a great WWDC talk a few months back, and I've included a link here, and I recommend that anybody who has time go and watch it. It's about 40-45 minutes. It's really worthwhile. Switch control is an accessibility feature of iOS 7 and later. It allows users with motor disabilities to operate their iPhone, iPad, even an iPod Touch. It moves sequentially through the screen elements and makes them all selectable. So here's a screenshot here of a hamburger menu, and we've focused on it with switch control, and we've got the tap option open. So that's the kind of thing that you'll see when you're running switch control. For us, we initially didn't think switch control was worth testing because we thought, hey, we already test with VoiceOver. Doesn't that cover everything? The answer is no, not really. They're not equivalent. You may find issues with switch control. You may find issues that you wouldn't otherwise find with VoiceOver. For example, you might find things on the screen that switch control will focus on and its speech feature will read, but VoiceOver wouldn't read it. Also, in the past, we've seen where IT teams have decided that in order to make something accessible for blind users, they may put in invisible buttons so that sighted users don't have to see them. The problem is that we expect most switch control users will be sighted, so those buttons really need to be visible. So we want to reveal that in our testing. Here's a basic switch for switch control testing. It's also a great switch if you're ever doing a demo. You're doing a demo in front of management or your coworkers. This really shows that there are people who use your app without tapping on the screen, without using a keyboard. This is a completely different animal. So this is a switch control box with two switches on it. It's called the AbleNet Bluetooth switch. It's a Bluetooth switch. It connects through Bluetooth. It's got a left switch, which is white, and a right switch, which is orange. So with the left switch, normally we would use it to cycle through all the elements on the screen of the app. And on the right switch, we would use it to then tap on that element. So Raji is going to demonstrate for us a happy path demo of how you would do something really basic in switch control. And then what we'll do is we'll get more into the details afterwards. So this is just to give you a look at how that works. So we're just going to set up our screen mirroring here. And take it away, Raji.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to show a happy path of what John was mentioning about the switch control, how to use switch control. So I'm going to just go through a flow with one of the inbuilt iOS apps that we all use for music, the iTunes store. So I'm going to navigate. So if you see, there is a blue screen on a blue square selection on the screen that I have already set up my switches. So I'm actually navigating using switch control, and I'm going to tap on this menu right here, and then I'm going to go and select iTunes store. So right there I go. So when you see that, then you see 3 buttons, and the first one is tap. So then you tap again on it to select that. So that takes you to the app, the iTunes store. So there you have it. So you go to the iTunes store and you see the boxes navigating. So when you tap on one of the boxes, you get the selection. You can tap through each individual section, like genres, featured, charts, and then you scroll down to the music section. So let's say you pick the first one. You want Reputation by Taylor Swift.
And can we just say that there's a kind of a hierarchy to all the elements on the screen? So you could be on a really busy screen and you don't have to switch through 100 different elements. It goes, first you pick a section of the screen, and then you drill down into and you select that section, and then you're cycling through all the elements within that section.
Thank you, John. So yes, so here I like this one, so I'm going to pick this, and then I'm going to select this, so to be able to see what songs are in it. If I like it, I'm going to buy it. So I tab again, click on this tab button. So it takes me to the page, and I see, okay, what are the songs? So I see, okay, this costs me $13.99. So if you see, there is a box that it selects the group of this section. So I come down to the section where it tells me, okay, the information about the album. So I have decided that I want to buy it. So I go here and then I tap through the elements. And then when you see this box, you get here and you go to this section, which is the price. And as you tap on it, then you'll see the other tab button, and you select that, and it gives you the option to buy the album. So you would just click on that. And then when you tap it, it'll open up the iTunes store to purchase. So you will enter your information, your iTunes, your password, and then you just purchase it just like you would purchase music. So all this is done using a switch control, an external switch, and without tapping anything on the screen. So that's what I wanted to show, and I'll pass it over to John.
Great. So now we'll come back to the presentation. We'll go into more detail. And how do I continue this from here?
So we click on slideshow here.
Okay. Thanks.
Next slide.
So that was that demo. So we found that there are 3 main ways to test switch control. And we'll go through the pros and cons of each. And we'll tell you which ones that we like best. The first way to test switch control is you can use your iPhone, the screen, as a switch. This is good if you don't have a switch control set, or you've gone somewhere without your switch control set. You just want to do some impromptu switch control testing. The cons are that it auto scans through all the elements on your screen, and it's fairly slow, and it only goes in one direction. So it's always going left to right, top to bottom, left to right. You can't, if you just miss your element by 1, you can't go back. You have to cycle all the way around the screen and come back again. So it can be a bit of a pain. Also, while you have the screen set up as your switch, you can't do regular screen navigation. So you can't just reach out to an element, some icon, and just tap on it directly. As a matter of fact, when you go to shut down switch control, you actually need to use switch control to shut down switch control. So you better be comfortable with it. So this is not our favorite way of testing switch control, but it is an option. And by the way, it's an option for iOS, but not for Android. And I'll just say that on Android, you do need the Bluetooth device. Okay, so that was number one. Number two is you can get a switch control set, like this one here. It's called the Bluetooth switch control. And we have two buttons, two switches. One moves to the next item, and you just keep tapping it until you get to the item you want. And the next one selects the item, so taps on it. The good things about this, it's a fairly realistic test of what a user with quadriplegia would use. It's great for demonstrations. You show this to management, they'll understand that you're not tapping on the screen the regular way and you're not using a keyboard. You're doing something different. And this is reaching a specific audience, and it's important to reach that audience. Also, while you have the switch set up and you're using it for switch control, regular screen navigation still works. So if you want to cheat, open something, close something, move something around just quickly, you can still do it.
Or you want to log into an application quickly, you can just type your username, password quickly, so you don't have to go through the manual key switches and use it through the switches, which can be difficult.
Yeah. So the cons are prices start around $185 US for this kind of a switch. And because you only have two switches, the scan can only go in one direction. So you use the left switch to scan through the page, use the right switch to select it. But it's great for demos though. So the third way is, and this is our favorite for testing, use a Bluetooth keyboard. Bluetooth keyboard is loaded with switches. You can add a switch for anything you want. You can go forward, backward, select. You can do one for home screen.
You can probably set up a screen to launch Siri. Some of the keyboards have a pre-programmed, like the escape button. If you tap on the escape button, it automatically goes to the home page of the iPhone or the iPad, whichever device you're testing with. On some of them, you can program a button, any button on the keyboard, to set it up to go to the app homepage, or you can use one button to maybe launch Siri. You can launch one button to use as an app switcher. So if you're navigating between multiple apps, you can use an app switcher. So you can set up any one button to act as an app switcher. So with the Bluetooth keyboard, you have more options, as John was mentioning.
So the cons are the price. The price isn't bad. It varies from $50 to $100, depending on how fancy you want your Bluetooth keyboard to be. We have found sometimes that when you're running an app, if you are using a Bluetooth keyboard for your switch control, it may prevent the on-screen keyboard from popping up in some apps. But that's something you know about, and you can segment your testing accordingly. So for the real switch control units, I already mentioned the Bluetooth model. That's a fairly reasonably priced model, and that's something that would work well for an IT team. I want you to know that if you are a quadriplegic, you're probably not going to use that one. You'll probably use the Tecla Shield. So Todd Stabelfeld, who I mentioned earlier, he uses the Tecla Shield. So the Tecla Shield is part of a modular system. You're going to pay $349 US just for this Tecla Shield control unit alone. And that's before you add the switches and before you add the mounting bracket. So I wouldn't go there as an IT person, but just to know that it's available. All right, so these are details on how to test with each of those three methods. We just put these in the deck for completeness in case you want to look at it later. We're not going to go through this now, are we?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, so method one is using the screen. So there's a bunch of steps there. You can go through it yourself later if you like. It's not our preferred method. It's handy sometimes, though. Method two, use an actual switch control set. This is great for demos. It requires a little bit of setup. You have to add some switches in the iOS menus. And our favorite method is the Bluetooth keyboard. So Raji, did you want to talk about that?
So
we're mirroring, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's already set up. It's showing. So the steps are on the deck on the slide here, but I can show and show it on the phone. So what we do is we go to the settings, and I have a Bluetooth keyboard already paired to my device here. So you go to General, and then you click on Accessibility, and then if you scroll down, there's interaction section has switch control. So right now it's on. So what I have done is I have already added some switches. So what I'm going to do just for the setup, to show the setup, I'm going to delete those switches and I'm going to do it again. So
maybe just delete one.
I'm just going to delete one. Okay, so let's say done. Thank you, John. So what we do is when we want, so what I have done here is I have, for easy scanning and navigation, I have set up the right arrow. I'm going to set up the right arrow for moving to the next item. So you go to add a switch and then you go into external, because it's an external device, Bluetooth keyboard. So I'm going to activate the switch that I want, which is going to be the right arrow. Okay.
It's not happy.
Let me just switch off this. So maybe now. Okay.
We're learning. The more we do this, the more we learn.
Okay, if you see though, it's okay. So we have already, the right arrow and the left arrow has been already set up. So what I have done is the right arrow on my keyboard moves to the next item. And the left arrow, when I press the left arrow on my Bluetooth keyboard, it moves to the previous item. So the switch that I'm going to add now is the enter button. So when I click on enter, so I choose external from the type of button I want, and then I say press enter on my keyboard. So that gives me a pop-up and say, okay, name your switch. So what do you want? So then I know what that switch, which switch to press or which button to press on my keyboard. So in this case, it's going to be the enter button. So, and then this opens up an action menu. So I need to decide what I want to do whenever I press enter on my keyboard. So that I wanted to select the item that I have tapped on. So I would say select. So now you can see that there are 3 switches here. Whenever I press right arrow on my keyboard, it will say move to the next item. Left arrow would move to the previous item, and the enter button would move to the select item.
Yep.
So these are the 3 main switches that I want to use, but there are more options. You can add more switches to do more functions. So this is how you set up, and I hope it's clear. And then after this, the one more thing that I want to mention here is that the scanning style has to be selected as manual. So whenever you're using an external keyboard, you always have to use manual scanning because you're going to control the scanning yourself. The auto scanning only works when the screen is set up as a switch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the points to remember. And when everything is set up and you're okay with it, then you can turn on switch control here, and then you're all good to go. And one more thing that would be easy for navigation is that on the accessibility shortcut, there is at the bottom of the screen, there's a link called accessibility shortcut. So I have chosen voiceover and switch control to show up whenever I press whenever I triple click the home button. So that's an accessibility shortcut. So you don't have to go to the settings every time you want to switch on switch control. You want to switch between voiceover and switch control. So when I go back to the home page, when I triple click the home page, I would see both the options and I can choose whichever I want. So I can toggle between voiceover or switch control. So right now, if you see switch control is selected, and that's what I'm using. So that's an easier way to get to that. So now I'll pass it on to John.
Okay.
To talk about the next slide.
Thanks. So back to the deck, and is it this one?
Yes,
okay.
That's one. No, this one.
That one?
The slideshow. Yeah.
All right, great. So that was setting up the Bluetooth keyboard. Okay, so at some point you're going to go shopping for a Bluetooth keyboard. In my opinion, it's good to look for these features. Look for one that has an Android, iOS, and a Windows selector switch so that the keys map properly. Also, some of the new Bluetooth keyboards can be paired with 2 or more devices, which is really handy because you just hit a button and you can pair it to both your iPhone and your iPad at the same time and toggle between the 2. Also, if they're rechargeable, it's handy that you don't have to run out and buy batteries. And Raji is actually testing right now with the Microsoft Universal Mobile Keyboard.
That's my favorite. It folds and it goes into my purse. It's easy to carry.
It's very cool.
It's very portable.
Another one that I've tried is the Kensington KP400. It's a big, full-sized keyboard. You can also use it with your Windows desktop or laptop, and you can toggle between it, your laptop, desktop, and your mobile device. And if you like touch typing, this would probably be the one for you. I thought I'd give Logitech a chance too. I don't own this device yet, but it's called the Logitech Multi-Device K480. And it has a little dial on it where you can switch between 3 devices. And on the right side, it's got a switch where you can switch between, I believe it's Windows, Android, and iOS. So it's a good investment to buy one of these things. You'll probably use it for other situations too. Okay, so when you get set up on switch control, what do you look for? What do you test for? So 3 main things. Number 1, ensure that you see a blue box cycling through all the tappable elements on the screen. If you have a button on screen and you can't reach it with your blue box, something's wrong. Also, ensure that you're not reaching anything that's invisible. If you're reaching invisible buttons, then again, something's wrong. That's going to say either there's an invisible button there that was added for blind users and people don't realize, whoever was developing the app doesn't realize that switch control users need to be able to see that button. That's bad. Or we've also found that sometimes there are 2 layers of things happening on your app, and you may be focusing on something underneath what you can see. And that's why in the instructions, we've also shown you how to turn speech on, because speech will tell you the name of the button that you're on. So that's helpful too in your testing. And the third thing to test is test your entire workflow from start to finish to make sure that the whole thing works with switch control.
If I may add to what John said, and being a functional tester, I've been testing mobile apps. When you know that the elements that it should tap through to be able to do the functionality for which the app is designed for. If it's not doing that, then there is a problem. So that's what, as a QA, as a tester, you need to point out that if an app is designed to, let's say, buy music or buy books or purchase something or do an action, let's say pay your bill or do your day-to-day anything that's designed for, and it's not doing that because the elements are not being tapped, then it's not doing its job. So that's what I wanted to point out from a testing perspective, points to note.
And for accessibility testing, it only takes 1 roadblock to ruin the whole workflow.
Yes.
Okay, so I may have mentioned earlier, switch control with speech. I like to turn on speech when I'm testing with switch control. Speech for switch control is different than voiceover. You can't use switch control and voiceover together at the same time because they have different ways of navigating the screen. By default, switch control will navigate the screen sort of hierarchically. It'll go to sections, and then you pick a section, and then you drill down within that section. So fortunately, switch control does have this really convenient speech feature, which sounds kind of like voiceover, and it will reveal to you what button you're on. It'll tell you the label for that button. So it's super helpful for your testing. If you don't know what's going on, you're on some invisible element and you want to know what it is, turn on speech and it'll tell you. That's
a great point.
Okay, we recommend doing some testing on the iOS home screen, just so you find the normal way of navigating and interacting with switch control. At the bottom of the home screen, we've got 3 dots. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm saying the wrong thing. It'll select a section of the screen, and sometimes it goes by rows. So you'll pick a row of icons. And if you pick the wrong row, don't worry about it. Just keep pressing the right arrow key, go forwards, and eventually you'll get a dotted line. And that dotted line, you hit enter and it'll take you back out. And then you can go to the next row.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what that was. Second one, we've got 3 dots at the bottom of the screen. You can call them pagination dots, call them whatever. When you go to them with switch control, you get these 2 handy icons, decrement and increment. So that's going to be the equivalent of swiping left and swiping right on the screen. It'll take you to the next screen full of icons. And you may have seen that there will be an icon that comes up that says tap, or in this case, it's increment, decrement. There's also a little switch at the bottom. It looks like 2 dots.
Yeah, that's the menu that's called the scanner menu for the switch control. So when you there is 2 pages, so it takes you to the next page to show more options. So as you see in the other screenshot, we have scroll, home, gestures, and escape. So let's say you are on a page where say it's a news app or anything that has a scrollable page. There is more content and you have to scroll through it. So if you hit scroll, it'll give you options to scroll up, scroll down, and then you can navigate using that. Or if let's say you're in the middle of the app and you want to do something, you come back to the home page, you hit on the home button there on the scanner menu, it takes you back to the home page of your phone. And there are gestures you can use for inside an app to flip and pan, and there are more things that you can do with gestures. And escape would probably escape you out of that section. So if you were in a tab that you don't want and you want to come out of that, so you would probably use the escape button to escape out of that and then come back to the previous item.
Okay.
Or previous page.
So it's really good when you're getting into switch control to go through these steps. And whenever we are testing an app and we're not quite sure how it should react, we go and test the home screen and see how it reacts, or try one of Apple's apps and see how they react. Now, they're not always ideal. Sometimes we may decide to do things better, but it's a good baseline. So going into some real life examples that we found in real apps out there in the wild. So this is the Gmail app, which is great. And what we're saying here is don't rely on swipe gestures, because if someone is using switch control, they're not going to be doing swiping. So in the Gmail app, you can swipe from the left to the right, and you can pull out the drawer from the side. So fortunately, they've included this hamburger icon, which does the same thing. So you can use switch control to activate this hamburger icon menu, and it'll bring out that left drawer for you.
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to talk to this one?
Sure. So I'm this screenshot. I would talk about the screenshot first, and then I'd probably show a demo with the device. So what this is a popular travel booking app called Kayak, and in this app, where you can either book flights, hotels, or car rentals. So if you see the top of the menu, the orange menu on top, which is the flights, hotels, and cars. So they are now the flight tab is actually selected, but
oops, sorry, go back.
So this is exactly what John was talking about. So this app does not have a swipe a hamburger menu on the side. So because of which these tabs go through a swipeable action. So if you want to get between hotels and flights and cars, those are 3 pages that you have to swipe through the app to get to them. So switch control does not scan through those. So if there was a hamburger menu on the side, a drawer to open up those, and then you could tab and select them, it would be a better user experience. So that way, when we are testing, we couldn't actually switch control couldn't actually swipe through or scan through those items. So same way, under the flights, there are 3 sub tabs. If you see one-way trip, round trip, and multi-city trip, those sub menu also does not scan when using switch control, which is not a good thing. So if you want to book a one-way trip, if you're not able to select or tap on a switch on the phone, and there is no way that you can use a external keyboard like the one I'm using to book a one-way flight. So if you see the numbers that we have marked on the screenshot, so those are the only tabs that switch control actually scans through, which is not a good user experience. So they can book a flight from Toronto, but they cannot actually choose a destination. So a switch control user who cannot tap on any switches or buttons on the device, but has an external keyboard or external switch connected to their device, would not be able to use the functionality of this app.
And by the way, you found that this worked fine in VoiceOver. So if we had only tested in VoiceOver, we would never know about this problem.
Exactly. That's correct, John. So I can probably do a quick mirroring of the screen and show what I'm talking about. So So as you can see, the blue square rectangle has actually appeared on the screen, and I'm going to go and select the Kayak app here. So it opens up the page, and then so I'm on the flights section. So if you see, if I'm hitting the right arrow, so it circles through the section which is to toggle between your destinations. So I can tap here and I can switch it, but right now it's both are selected to, for some reason, Toronto here, both. So if you were to select from and to, you would not be able to change it because.
Did you want to just quickly pick another, just tap directly on the screen and pick another destination?
It doesn't change it actually. It just leaves it there.
Okay.
I tried it before.
Okay, I'll leave it to you.
Sorry. Yeah, it's just, so it actually goes through, so let's say you had nothing, you just opened the app for the first time, and default destination is say selected to Toronto, and you were trying to go, let's say, to New York City, but you are not able to go to that to section to book your to destination that you're going to. So it switches, but from here, toggle switch, and from then it goes to the search arrow, which actually searches for flights or available flights. And then if you notice, it doesn't even select the dates. So if you want to pick another date and not November 21st, you're stuck. You cannot do that. So, and then it goes to the search, and it toggles between all these tabs, and again circles back to the same thing again. And one more thing I want to point out is that once you come here, and then if you see there is more content at the bottom of the screen. So in order to see that, I have to use the scroll feature. So I just do scroll down, and then the page scrolls. So then I go to the other menu, and then as I mentioned before, I can go and say escape. So the menu kind of disappears, and then this would be a good place to actually turn on voice or speech, and I can quickly show you the difference or how it actually announces the elements on the screen. So I would go back to accessibility here, and then I would go to switch control, and then if you go scroll to the bottom, you would have say speech. So you click on that, and then you turn speech on.
Calendar through weather. FaceTime through watch.
So now.
YYZ through swap origin and destination airports. Toronto on. Toronto November 21st. One traveler. Tuesday. Economy. Search. Track the status of the flight. See if your flight is on time. Explore the world. See where you can go on your budget. Search.
It's weird.
Watch list.
What's weird?
It actually taps through the elements when you turn the voice on. Have you noticed that?
Oh, by turning the speech on.
The speech on.
Now we're reaching all these elements.
Yes. Yeah. So now so the difference is a person who did not have the speech on would not know this. So this is something also to check while testing. So that's not a good experience. So if somebody had not turned speech on, they would not know that they would not be able to have selected this if they were not able to tap on any of the buttons on the screen. So now when the speech is turned on, you can select where you want to go to. Let's say New York. So now I'm able to select.
And Raji's cheating because she's tapping
I'm tapping on the
screen
so that I can.
But that's okay.
So now I'm able to see select through the dates, the destination. I can choose which type of I want, economy, or so I can choose the number of seats, number of adults. So if you see the difference
so now
that
it's working.
It works when the speech is on. That's the difference I wanted to show.
But I imagine that if I were quadriplegic, I might not have speech turned on. I might just be looking at the screen.
That's one of the points for the testing teams to note and included it as part of their testing scope.
Yep.
Scroll down.
Okay. So that's what I wanted to show, and I'll pass it on to John to walk through the next slide.
Okay, going back to the deck.
FaceTime through watch.
Okay, I'll quickly turn off this speech here.
We also found issues with grouped elements. So here's an app where we see a post, and there are two hashtags inside the post, $news and $Bitcoin. So probably I want to tap on one of those hashtags. So when I use switch control to tap on that area of the screen, focus jumps back up to the top of the screen. which is not helpful at all. So I'm not able to access those two hashtags. Exactly. It just doesn't work. But in a comparable app, in a different app, we have a post, and it's got tappable elements inside the post. I select the post with switch control, and it sequentially takes me through every tappable element, which is perfect. It works fine.
Yeah.
So we have a fail and we have a pass. Troubleshooting. So sometimes you get stuck. You may land on an invisible element. There might be an invisible button, or you might be focused accidentally on the wrong layer and not know it. And you don't even know why you see a blue square where there's no button there. So that's where it's good to turn on speech and have speech announce the element to you. Also, I don't think this has happened a lot, but we have gotten stuck on a particular element.
Yes.
It probably happens more because we turn switch control on and off all the time.
Yes. I mean, and sometimes, you know, like when you have multiple pages or apps open, and then you have been on one of them, and the layout of that app was different. The switches were on different sections, and then you switch to a different app. Sometimes it does overlap, and then it reads something that's actually not selected or highlighted.
Yeah.
So then you, as you mentioned, so you just turn off switch control and turn it back on again. Okay. And come back to it. So
do's and don'ts. Let's see. Do ensure that every control can be reached sequentially. So if it's a button, drop down, whatever, every control should be visible. And if you're a developer and you have an app that checks to see if VoiceOver is running, and it does special things if VoiceOver is running, remember that there are also switch control users out there. So do test with that as well. Also, don't rely on any swipe gestures or invisible buttons to initiate an action for your app. And don't rely on the user using Explore by touch. Everything should be reachable sequentially. That's important. Where to learn more? So we've given you an introduction to switch control from an IT person's point of view. If you want to go and learn more, there are some great links out there. So first of all, here's the official iOS page on switch control where we learned a lot.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more from the user's point of view,
it actually has a full page description with screenshots on how to set up switch control. Something that we went through briefly, but it's got more details there, how to set up switches. So that's a great place to go and read.
Right. And these guys, Christopher Hills and Louis Perez, they're experts on switch control from a user's point of view. So Christopher Hills has a motor disability, and he's a switch control user, and Louis Perez is his, work partner, and they've actually written a free ebook. There's a ton of information out there, more than you can probably ever get through, but it's great to know that wealth of information is there. Also, the Android version of switch control is called Switch Access. It's very similar, except you can't use the screen as a switch, so you will be using a Bluetooth device, either a switch control set or a Bluetooth keyboard, and there are some really good links on how to do that here. So in summary, number one, make sure you test your app with VoiceOver and switch control. Accessibility is not just about blind people. There are different types of disabilities that we need to take into account. Number two, test the complete workflow from start to finish. Don't just helicopter in and test part of the workflow and say it's great, it works. So find the bugs and fix them. Then maybe consider improvements. So if you find that the user, in order to get through things in your app, they need to fall back onto those submenus that are built into iOS, consider adding an element on the screen. So if you have an area of the screen that is, say, scrollable, and it's not visually obvious that it's scrollable, maybe add a little icon or something.
Yeah, something that would, so that's where a design team, a development team, and the testing team could probably give inputs from their testing, especially with, adding a scrollable, an icon which says, okay, scroll here, click here to scroll more. So that would tell the user, okay, there is a page that there's more things that are at the bottom of the screen. I need to tap here. Those are something from the UI side that you can do. Anything that's worked well, repeat it. Repeat the successful techniques that you have developed, and at the end, make a good app that everybody, all kinds and all types of users can use, a functional app.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for our talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raji and John. It's a great talk.
We're open for questions.
So we do have a few questions.
I think we have a microphone issue here.
So, sorry, can you hear
There
me
you
now?
go.
I can hear you.
Okay. So thank you
Yes.
very much for your talk, Raji and John. It was great. We do have a couple of questions, but first there's a comment from Sarah Bourne who says, some people have severely limited motor control but still want to use IT. This session is fantastic. How to and why all in one. So that's some great feedback. And yes, I mean, as the name suggests, we want inclusive design to be about including everyone. So having presentations like this is part of that aim. So we do have two questions, as I said. The first is from Wendy Mosley. Is keyboard-only testing, not with screen reader, comparable to switch control testing?
Sorry, could you repeat?
Sure. Is keyboard-only testing, not with screen reader, comparable to switch control testing?
Screen reader, I would say, is more for like a desktop, right? Is it or?
Well, there's VoiceOver.
VoiceOver.
So that's a screen reader.
Screen reader. It's not actually comparable because voice.
Sorry, can I jump in?
Yes,
there
sure.
are some similarities. Like if there are buttons on the screen and the button has a label, it's a sign up button. You may find that both switch control and VoiceOver will read the button and they'll read it the same way. Also, sometimes with switch control, you'll reveal reading order problems that you might also reveal with VoiceOver. But that's where the similarity ends. And beyond that, we found really unexpected differences between the two.
Yes, I mean, as you know, VoiceOver is mostly for the non-sighted or blind user. So every element on the screen has to be read out by the VoiceOver. So that's one of the things that is very important for a VoiceOver. And buttons and links have to be called out so that the blind user knows that they can tap and go and do more functions there. But as opposed to switch control is more where a quadriplegic user, but they could be sighted and they can see the screen. So the buttons are visible, but at the same time, they should also be tappable if they cannot access it, if they cannot access it with the external switch that they're using, then it's of no use. So they should be able to tap through it, but they can also see it.
If you've never tested switch control, it may reveal things to you about your app that you never thought about. Maybe you've had developers in the past who were only thinking about blind users and they added invisible buttons to the app. And that's not helpful for a switch control user because they need to be able to see that button to get to it and know what it is.
Exactly. Sometimes the pop-ups which don't have a close button, and if that's not visible to the user and switch control does not scan through it, then they would not be able, especially on iPads when you have popovers which don't have close buttons, you tap outside the pop-up to dismiss it. But in this case, if you have a close button, you would be able to do it easier. It's more visual.
Okay, thank you. So we have a couple of questions from Mikołaj Rodnicki. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, but I think one of them has been answered already. But the second question is, what about switch control support in Android? Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's there. It's called Switch Access. The three options that we talked about for switch control in iOS, you only get 2 of those for Android. You can't use the screen as a switch, which is fine with me because I'm not too crazy about it anyway. So you're really left buying yourself one of those switch control units or get a Bluetooth keyboard. I think the Bluetooth keyboard is great for actual testing. The switch control unit is great for demos.
Yes.
Other than that, you'll go through the menus and there are settings and everything's very similar, but just slightly different because it's iOS versus Android. If you follow the links at the end of our deck, there's a wealth of information there about switch access on Android.
Yep. And then the scanner menu, I'm pretty sure it's similar on Android. I haven't seen it, but I guess there are more options that the user can choose without setting up switches like the ones we showed here, home button. And so I'm pretty sure there would be more buttons that you can set up apart from your external switch that you're using. within the native or within the OS itself for the Android device.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions coming in. There's two here that I think are related, so I'll ask them at the same time. The first is from Catherine Green. On the web, if you have tested with keyboard only and all is good, does that mean that all should also be good with switch control? Or is it possible that there are some issues that you can only find by testing with switch control? And Seth Swanson asks, how does switch control work with web pages, web apps? Is there a specific design doctrine for enabling switch control for the web?
So I think that we've been focusing mainly on native mobile apps. So when it comes to the web, I'm going to go ahead and guess that there's probably less that can go wrong. If you do, I recommend, first of all, testing everything with the keyboard alone. No switch control, no screen reader, just keyboard alone. Get through that. Then when that works, then do the screen reader. Test it with the screen reader, and then run it through with switch control. You probably won't find as much on switch control because you've already tested it sequentially with the keyboard and you've tested it with the screen reader. But you never know. It's worth going through your workflow, and you may learn something where you want to go back and change your design a little bit, change your code a little bit, and then from then on you can just follow those new procedures that you've made for yourself. It's just scary to not know what this segment of your audience is running through.
Yes, and if I may add, when I was testing one of the apps on the mobile devices, so there are links from your apps. There could be possibilities that there are many apps which link externally to a browser. So when I'm on iOS, I opened up a browser, a link which opened up on Safari, and I was able to actually continue using switch control, and it did not give me that many problems, except that if it's a page with a lot of text on it and it's a huge page that scrolls, you just have to use the scroll button quite a bit to actually scroll through to read all of the elements. So that's what I found. I did some browser testing too. So,
and also on a web page, it's expected that you see the page and you know that you're going to have to scroll. But we've seen some native apps where there's a scrollable section and it wasn't immediately obvious visually. So. Yeah. Web is probably less problematic.
Because it's a bigger view anyway, right?
Well, you're dealing with the browser, and the browser is already going to be in good shape, I think.
I agree.
Okay, great answer.
I hope that answers their question.
It does, I think. We've got one last question from Sarah Bourne. What kind of errors would be behind elements not being switch reachable?
What kind of errors?
Yeah, so what I think the question is, what might cause something not to be reachable with a switch?
Well, one thing that we've seen is there might be two layers of something on your native app. So there might be a sticky bar at the bottom.
I think also I've noticed that sometimes when you have like a menu that is, sometimes you have gone to one page and then you're scrolling from the, let's say the hamburger menu, or you're going back, and then there are overlapping items from the previous screen that switch control may read through, which also happens in VoiceOver. So it's not something unique to switch control, but in switch control, sometimes you have to be, you have to clear the cache or just launch the app again, clear everything and clear all past history and kind of open up or launch the app again to make sure that that was not a caching issue or something that was not native, like not, there was not an issue with the app itself. So maybe you launch that and try it again, and it could work. But sometimes it does do the overlapping from the screen behind. So it'll start reading buttons from the back of the previous screen that you were on. So that's one of the things that I've noticed. If you want to add anything.
I think that was it. Just you'll be focusing on things that sometimes are underneath the layer that you're on, or you'll be focusing on something that's off screen, or you'd be focusing on something that was built for blind users, but they never took switch control users into account.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Thanks for answering those questions. And Raji, John, that was a great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So the winner of our JAWS license for this session is going to be Wendy Mosley. please contact us. You can DM us on Paciolo Group, and we'll contact you with your license key. So ID24 is brought to you by the Paciolo Group with kind support from Barclays and the Centre for Inclusive Design. And you can find out more about both of those organisations on our website. If you like this session or any of our other sessions today, please hit the like button and subscribe to the ID24 channel for future events, streams and videos. And we will be back in about 10 minutes with our next session. Once again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.